Just imagine, opening your eyes, you're petrified, inside a machine that is getting closer and closer to the ground. At this moment, you might be thinking that if you had studied to be a pilot, you could land this plane. Now, imagine waking up in the shoes of an aviator, sitting in an early 20th century plane, flying over stretches of water, as far as the eye can see. Nothing can save you. Nothing, except perhaps your fate. This contest already has made 6 victims. On the 21st of May, 1927, takeoff. The pilot will soon be alone in his aircraft above the Atlantic. From New York to Paris, without any stopover. More than 5,000 kilometers separate him from glory. In 1919, French-born American businessman Raymond Orteig creates the Orteig Prize. He offers $25,000 for the first non-stop aircraft flight between New York and Paris. For the first 7 years, nothing really happens because nobody is willing to take such a risk. At the dawn of 1927, and after several deaths, a young Postal pilot by the name of Charles Lindbergh wants to try his luck. By the mid-20s, the Atlantic has already been crossed by plane by Alcock and Brown, and the First World War, which has just ended, played a major role in the development of aircraft. Airplanes are finally developed enough to make a flight of this length possible. Still, with more than 5,000 kilometers, this flight remains impossible in the eyes of most. The following is the story of Charles Lindbergh, from his beginnings in aviation all the way to his solo crossing of the Atlantic. Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. was born on the 4th of February 1902 in Detroit, Michigan. He is the son of August Lindbergh, lawyer and congressman. His mother, Evangeline Lodge Land, is a chemistry teacher in a high school of Detroit. He grows up on a farm in the state of Minnesota, and he is from a very young age fascinated by motorized transportation. Lindbergh learns to drive with the Saxon 6 automobile of the family, and later his own motorbike. They will be the starting point of his future obsession: flying. In February 1922, Lindbergh quits college. He's only interested in mechanics and adventure. Lindbergh convinces his parents to pay for flying lessons. He enrolls at the local flying school in Lincoln. At the age of 20, he boarded his first plane, for the time being as a passenger. For Lindbergh, it will be an unforgettable experience. Escape from the earthly world, frightening for the shy young man that he is. He was not to last long in the school. 4 months after joining, he left to work as a stuntman. He started out as a parachutist, walking on the wings of moving aircrafts. But Lindbergh did not just want to use planes to perform exceptional tricks. Lindbergh wanted to fly them. He bought his first plane, a 2-seated Curtiss JN4, for $500. From then on, he was known as Daredevil Lindbergh, the acrobat of the sky. He spent several months crisscrossing the country in his plane. He had his first minor accidents. He wants to learn, progress, and perfect his flying. What better way to combine theory and practice than in military aviation? In March 1924, he joins the US Army Air Service. He there learns navigation, aerial combat, and pre-flight preparations. He is a maniac, obsessed with accuracy. He therefore appreciates the Army's discipline and its attention to detail. He graduates top of his class, but is not allowed to remain in the active army, which has no need for more pilots and is reducing its squadrons. He returns to civil aviation, but remains in the military reserve corps. That's when he hears that a man called Richard Byrd is looking for a pilot to carry out the first expedition to fly over the North Pole. Lindbergh applies, but it's already too late. Byrd has chosen his pilot in the person of Floyd Bennett. From April 1926, Lindbergh is a postal pilot, flying mail on the new airmail route linking Chicago with St. Louis. By flying several hours a week, he develops his stamina. The long hours spent in the clouds soon will give him the vision he has been dreaming of. And his vision is the Arctic Prize. In September 1926, so 7 years after the creation of the prize, First World War hero René Fonck was the first to try his luck with 3 other companions. His aircraft has been built for the occasion. The S-35 Sikorsky plane is modern, elegant, and decorated even on the inside. With over $100,000 investment and 3 engines, Fonck's project looks set for success. But there was one problem: the weight. Fonck's airplane weighed more than 10 tons. On the 21st of September is the day. The aircraft fully loaded by liters of fuel and non-essential equipment, plus 4 crew members, weighed over 12 tons. The S-35 starts down the 1.6 kilometers of runway. And everyone sees it. The plane is struggling to get off the ground. Two of the crew members were burned to death. At the age of 24, Lindbergh decides to enter the race for the prize. Lindbergh learns the first lessons from Fonck's mistakes. The plane has to be as light as possible, and there will be no room on it for anything superfluous. Lindbergh will have to canvass the influential men of St. Louis. He has taught some of the notables of the city how to fly, so he contacts them. He ends up raising a beautiful sum, $18,000, but it's still very tiny compared to the budget of his rivals. The people who lend him the money request that they be allowed to determine the name of the aircraft. A highly symbolic name. The plane will be known as the Spirit of St. Louis. In February 1927, the press becomes fascinated by the race. They announce that 5 competitors are preparing for it. Lindbergh has no time to lose. He has to find a manufacturer who, in addition to Lindbergh's limited budget, will have to build a quality plane in record time. The San Diego firm Ryan claims to be able to build the plane on budget and in 2 months. The construction of the Spirit of St. Louis begins in an old fish cannery converted into a workshop. Lindbergh and engineer Donald Hall start by designing the aircraft. Lindbergh doesn't want a windscreen like in every other aircraft. It is too space consuming. He decides to sacrifice vision in favor of an enormous fuel tank. It will have no co-pilot or navigator. The only way he will be able to see ahead of him will be through a periscope. Lindbergh's project requires the workers to work 10 hours a day, and he wants to leave nothing to chance. He keeps an eye on everything and checks every centimeter with maniacal and obstinate care. His seat has to be as uncomfortable as possible so that he will not fall asleep. But other competitors turn up. 3 weeks before Lindbergh's departure, on the 26th of April, Davis and Wooster take off for one of the last tests before the crossing. After takeoff, they find that at about 15 meters altitude, the plane is unable to climb sufficiently to clear a row of trees. The plane crashes nose first into the ground. Both men on board are killed in the crash. The next day, Lindbergh's plane finally leaves the workshop. The Spirit of St. Louis is ready to fly the 5,000 kilometers from New York to Paris. The gamble has paid off. 60 days after construction began, Lindbergh's dream can become reality. He will say he has never flown a plane that accelerates so well. Lindbergh's relaxed attitude surprises the press, who caricatures him all over America. And yet, he's not sure he can win. 12 days before his flight, on the 8th of May 1927, French aviation legend Charles Lindbergh and his companion François Colly take off from Le Bourget in Paris. This time, an east-to-west attempt. Their plane, named the White Bird, takes off at dawn. The next day, French newspapers announced their arrival in New York. The news is not confirmed. They were last seen off the coast of Ireland. The two aviators probably disappeared in the Atlantic, and no trace was left behind. At this point, the Arctic Prize has already claimed 6 victims. 2 days later, Lindbergh flies from San Diego to New York. His first long flight with his new plane. In the process, he broke the record for crossing the American continent, proving the speed of the Spirit of St. Louis. On the 13th of May, he is seen posing with his main competitors, Byrd and Chamberlain, all smiles. The weather forecast is bad, forcing the pilots to be patient. This gives the press plenty of time to film Lindbergh in public appearances. Lindbergh hates these moments, putting himself on display for everyone and answering questions. It's the opposite of his character, of his restaurant side, hence the nickname given to him by the press, Lonely Eagle. At dawn on the 20th of May, the forecasts predict a possible improvement in the weather over the Atlantic. Lindbergh takes his plane out of the hangar. He cannot wait any longer. He jumps at the chance while the others decide to wait some more. It is still very risky, and most give him no chance of succeeding. The bookmakers are betting him to lose at 10-1. It is raining and Lindbergh has a tarpaulin put over the engine. He has a full tank of oil and petrol. His plane is actually equipped with 5 full tanks of petrol. To avoid any risk of overcharging, he gets rid of the battery on his instrument panel. A modest torch will do the job. He has no radio, no parachute to cross the entire Atlantic. Lindbergh takes 5 sandwiches and a flask of water. The wind is blowing in the wrong direction. His rival Byrd gives him the last handshake as a mark of respect. Few of the spectators present believe that Lindbergh has any chance to survive. The Spirit of St. Louis takes off over the muddy terrain around 8 a.m. Everything has been done to lighten it, but the plane still weighs 2.2 tons and seems to have trouble getting off the ground. Lindbergh is unable to achieve maximum power from the engine, which is struggling to cope with such a heavy load of fuel. With 300 meters to go, it desperately needs to avoid hitting the telegraph wires at the end of the runway. His plane finally passes them by about 6 meters. The first critical point to overcome is a success. The press plane follows him over Long Island. He's moving away, and nobody ever filmed him over this point. He's flying over the Atlantic Ocean for the first time. His flight should take him to the Canadian province of Nova Scotia. While in San Diego, Lindbergh had bought some navigation charts of the North Atlantic, and he had spent hours in the local library. He didn't know that the Great Circle route was the shortest distance between 2 points on a curved surface. His next stop after Canada must be Ireland, and then down to France. As he passes over the water, he is caught in heavy turbulence. Lindbergh asks himself, "Can instructor stand a sharper blow? I feel in my shoulder, in my body, in my mind, that the reserve of strength is low." Lindbergh flies at moderate speed to spare the engine, but is much too low and almost hits the mast of a sailing boat. "I have to go back up," reflects Lindbergh, but slowly. He is feeling tired, having not slept all night. Time seems long. After 10 hours in the air, he lies awake thinking about his accidents. As a stuntman, military pilot or postal pilot, he has several times escaped death. Aviation accidents were common in the first quarter of the 20th century, and many of the adventurers of the air lost their lives. It was a matter of race to see who could achieve a feat first. And here Lindbergh sits above the waves, with no one giving him a chance. Lindbergh reaches Newfoundland at dusk. He has been flying for 12 hours. He descends low over the rooftops, dives towards the port, and bids a final farewell before the long silence. Now I'm giving up both land and day. Now I'm heading eastwards across 2 oceans, one of night and one of water. This is where real navigation must begin. On this route across the North Atlantic, Lindbergh does not come across any ships. The Titanic disaster has occurred 15 years earlier, and no one ventures into the iceberg zone anymore. The whole world is in a tizzy. He has no radio, and no one knows where he is over the Atlantic. Lindbergh's plane is still intact. But for how much longer? He realizes that he has climbed too high, and the freezing temperatures to which the Spirit of St. Louis is exposed cause frost to form on the plane's wings. The worst danger in aviation. The frost could block the controls, weigh down his wings, and throw him into the icy waters of the Atlantic, where Lindbergh would not survive for long. For an hour, Lindbergh struggles not to lose altitude. He asks himself, "Should I come back? But I haven't come all this way for nothing." At the 18th hour of his flight, his compass goes out. He is caught in a brutal magnetic storm and is treading water, going in circles, not knowing his course. Lindbergh has no hope of making it. But he does not give up. Thanks to a sudden lull in the weather, he can use the stars to guide him and regain his composure. Calm is precisely the trap for him, who hasn't slept for almost 40 hours. Fatigue is torture, drowned out by the engine's noise. My eyelids are heavy, and I fight to stay awake. The monotony of the ocean is relentless. I know I can't afford to sleep, so I press on. His body is on the verge of collapse, and his sleep deprivation is sending him into a hallucinogenic delirium. The San Elmo's fire had changed again. No longer did it hover by the tail. It was all around me now. A crackling ethereal radius lightning turned into living shapes. What did they signify? They surrounded me. Were they friendly or hostile? I could not know. Having lost consciousness for a few moments, Lindbergh recovers at sea level. He has almost died. At the 27th hour, Lindbergh sees a black dot on the horizon. It is indeed a boat. He climbs down and circles the boat, trying to spot someone on the dock. He shouts out, "Where is Ireland?" No answer. He heads off again. The course must be the right one. And yes, Ireland appears. He hasn't reached Paris yet, but is already the first man to fly solo from the American continent to Europe. Now we can head south with just one goal in mind: Paris. He skirts the English coast and crosses the English Channel. Carried away by a feat that has already made him famous, he no longer feels tired, but increasingly excited. He is 2.5 hours ahead of schedule. On reaching the French coast, he thinks of Nungesser and Collie, who disappeared during the attempt. He passes over Deauville at the end of his second day of flying, and even gives himself permission to eat his first sandwich. No matter what happens now, I land in France. It's only 200 miles to Paris, and half of that will be in twilight. The news spreads everywhere that Lindbergh has been spotted flying over France. Many believe it to be a hoax. In newsrooms, cafes, parks, everyone is buzzing about it. An American arrives at Le Bourget tonight. We have to go and see. It's not true, my friend. Nobody can do that. Everything and everyone that can drive is heading for the airport. Lindbergh has no idea what awaits him. At around 10 o'clock, Parisians heard the sound of an engine circling the city. The crowd goes wild. Lindbergh doesn't know exactly where Le Bourget is. He knows it's a landing strip somewhere northeast of Paris. He sees lots of lights around what appears to be a runway, but there are so many that Lindbergh wonders if it isn't a factory. He hesitates, comes back, and makes his decision. This is it. I'm going to land here. At around 10:30 in the evening, and after more than 33 hours in the air, Lindbergh lands at Le Bourget. He realizes that the world has been following his journey, hour by hour. Everyone tries to steal a piece of his plane, which is already a legend. At Le Bourget, the situation around Lindbergh becomes almost dangerous, and he is exfiltrated incognito by a small car. Indeed, the whole city is in a monster traffic jam because of his arrival. So the small car drives along country roads. They finally manage to reach the residence of the American ambassador. He hasn't slept for over 40 hours. When he goes to bed, he certainly is not aware of what his life will be like after this night. After his historic solo transatlantic flight, he becomes a global sensation. He is celebrated with parades and honors in the United States, but also in Europe. Lindbergh embarks on a European tour, meets with leaders, and receives numerous awards. He returns to the US, endorses products, and engages in commercial ventures. Lindbergh will write a best-selling book about this journey and become an advocate for aviation development. Called a hero wherever he goes, Lindbergh is not immune to controversy. He will be accused of being a Nazi sympathizer, and statements about the hierarchy of races will tarnish his image. In addition, he will be in the middle of what the press will call the trial of the century. But we may see all of that in a future video if the theme of this one has interested you. I hope that you've enjoyed its format and that you've learned something about Lindbergh and his incredible flight. I see you soon for a new story. Bye!